Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kajzoo and today I'm going to be showing you all the top big boy tanks that can be in the Christmas boxes this Christmas season in World of Tanks, guys. So stay tuned because this is going to be actually quite interesting. As you may know, the Daily Bounce has released the first large box tank on its website, and it is going to be the MIVY. I'm just gonna call it the MIVY, and I'm going to quickly jump into the stats and show you guys what this tank is capable of now. Let's look at the stats first. It has 45 top speed. It's a premium heavy tank of America, tier 8, and it has 45 top speed now. Let's actually equip this tank fully with shooting equipment right here, and let's take a look at the stats afterwards real quick. Cola, birds in arms, repairs, recon, all the skills that you should have on your tanks, and also the rammer directive. Now, as you can see, the tank has 2.6k DPM with 822 reload for 360 alpha. I mean, that's pretty average. A lot of tier 8 tanks have kind of the same. The Renegade is fairly similar. The E75 TS is very similar. 217 aiming time. That's not great, but it's still a heavy tank. And the dispersion factors are really not that good though. They are 0.20 and 0.10 on the turret travelers by basic. This is really not good, and it's not gonna be very good gun handling so far, it seems. But it does have a 45 top speed, and you could probably boost this up with even applying turbo here, and probably put it up to 51, and then also very healthy power to weight ratio. But since the power to weight ratio is already very healthy at 18, it's probably not going to be needing to use turbo on this, rather maximize the poor firepower. This tank has 1500 HP, that's fairly normal for a tier 8 heavy. 10 degrees of gun depression. Well, actually, let's look at the armor itself, how it's going to stand up against those shells. Let's go to hybrid live, and you can see that this upper plate is very complex. Now, there are places where it's like green, but there are places where it's like really deep red with 270 millimeters of penetration. So this upper plate is really a troll upper plate, the typical troll upper plate that you get on the American heavies and TDs. But the lower plate is fairly weak. As you can see, it's 180 effective. But if you actually angle this tank like this, and if you only show this side when you're trying to side script, this whole side becomes very weak. And especially if I load APCR, you can just see that once you expose an enemy has more than 220 millimeters of penetration, they're going to go through this little cheek of the tank here. But the turret itself is fairly good. The mantlet is very weak though. I imagine it's probably going to be a secondary weak spot just next to this cupola, which is absolutely gigantic, and it's fully penetrable. Doesn't matter where you hit, it's going to penetrate, and it's very weak. It's 127 millimeters of armor. This tank is fairly interesting looking, actually, it would seem like. Let's look at the gun depression, how it looks like when you're trying to aim down on people, actually, because that cupola might actually be hidden, but it's never gonna be hidden, really. This cupola is really easy to snipe. Oh yeah, and this tank is probably the mechanic. This tank probably has the mechanic of the double tracked Yo tanks. Yeah, there are two tracks, as you can see here. There's the separate one below the big one, and so this tank cannot really get that tracked very efficiently like all the other Yo tanks can in World of Tanks that is going to be released soon into the live servers. This tank is interesting. I mean, the firepower is okay-ish. The armor actually just might hold up unless they shoot you in the cupola. It's actually quite okay. The turret is really thick from the side, actually. Look at that turret armor. 300 to 400 here. Wow, I mean, there is like a weak spot, but this turret is not really a weak spot even from the side, man, it would seem like. I mean, the back of the tank is fairly weak, of course. But yeah, but this tank seems promising. I mean, it's probably going to be like some kind of Renegade level. The Renegade also has the cupola, but I think the Renegade also probably has a worse hull armor here, honestly, and probably has a worse turret from the side. This turret is actually interesting, man, because from the side, as I said, it's not a weak spot, so... The MIVY has really bad penetration values. Now, 220 at tier 8 is like 240 at tier 10. It's really not that good. and even if you're shooting APCR, you're only gonna have 247, which is going to be enough for those weak spots. But for tier 9 and tier 10 tanks, this is going to be quite low still. Anyway, let's look at the second tank. The second candidate I think that is going to be in the large Christmas boxes. Now this is the AMBT tier 8 American premium medium tank, which has the same mechanic as the Progettos and the standard B Italian medium tanks, with this kind of single shooting auto-loading mix of a gun loading system. And you can already see that this tank really has no DPM, 2.1k DPM. That's very low. Obviously that's counting in the entire reload sequence of all the shells, which are 10 seconds, 11 seconds and 15 seconds fully maxed out when it comes to loading a single shell. Now the 360 average damage is pretty okay for tier 8 in a medium tank. As you can see, this tank has insanely good power to weight ratio, man. Holy moly, 25. That's really gonna make this tank go. But you have to have turbo, because the top speed very limits this tank's mobility. As you can see, by default it's only 40, and I already put a bond turbo on. And you can also just use the mobility slot on the left side in case you don't have access to the bond turbo, in case this tank makes it onto the Christmas boxes. But without further ado, it has 3 clips, 360. What is the APCR pen of this? 1278. That's actually very decent velocity for that APCR. 215 penetration. That's fairly normal. But this APCR, this gold APCR, is just absolutely abysmal. 280 millimeters of penetration, guys, at tier 8. That is just going to chew through any kind of armor. And this absolutely ridiculous velocity as well, almost 1500 meters per second. As you can see, the aiming time is very poor, 232. I mean, you can make this work. Dispersion is 0.32, fully tagged out. I mean, that's kind of okay. For tier 8 it doesn't matter, because tier 8 weak spots are much bigger than tier 10 ones, and it's much more easier to snipe those tanks. But the dispersion factors are really good, actually, in my opinion. 09, 09, 07, that's really good. The gun handling is probably going to be quite smooth once you're fully aimed. 105 caliber, 35 ammo capacity. Now that could be an issue, actually. That could be an issue. I mean, not a tier 8 that much, but still, you're going to be firing a lot, and it only has 12,000 potential damage and 4.4k shell cost, and also 1k for the normal APCR, which is quite poor. 215. You're gonna have to spam a lot of APC, like gold APCR in this tank. What else can we look at? 46 top speed is very bottlenecked. This tank is very bottlenecked by the top speed. You can see the power to weight ratio is absolutely amazing, and you have to be running turbo on this. I mean, I think that's just a no-brainer, man. This bottleneck has to be gone. What else can we look at? 9 degrees of gun depression, which is also really good, depending on what kind of turret this tank is having, and also 1300 HP is pretty good. Okay camo. But let's look at the tank itself, actually. You can see that there's a huge lower plate, which is very weak. It's 100 millimeters, and it's a 170 millimeters to 180 millimeters effective, and it's angled. Side scraping is kind of hard in this tank, because this is becoming an auto pen. Actually, let's go to hybrid live. This is better. And I'm going to load the big bully rounds of this tank, and you can see that the turret is very weak from the side here. Even if you give a little bit of side profile, you can already pan it here. But from the front, you have a massive turret ring that is probably not that hard to hit. But you can see the turret shape is kind of like the 60 DP, actually, at tier 10. But this turret ring is huge, the lower plate is huge. Obviously, you're going to be facing this tank a lot from hold down positions. Now, it has a cupola, but it's very small. It's not that prominent. And you can see that the mantlet does have weak spots here. 258, 240, 220. But that's only going to be good against people that shoot gold. But you can see the turret cheeks are actually very okay-ish. The angling on this turret cheeks is very nice to bounce those shots. Overall, I like this armor profile a lot. I also like this auto bounce angle that you have on the top here. And I think that you can actually really make this work when you go into those full down situations. And actually, let's check it out, how much the gun can depress. And you can see that this is probably going to be the angle that you're going to be facing this tank from. Of course, this whole shot trap here is kind of weak, as you can see, but I'm not sure if many people will be aiming for this in the beginning, honestly. You could probably use this. You can see the turret is very weak from the sides, and when you angle just a bit, it already becomes a massive weak spot here. But honestly, this tank looks quite promising. It interests me much more than the Myvi did. Let's look at the third one actually, guys, and this is going to be spicy because this is a tier 9 Russian premium medium tank. There's been a lot of talks about the Object 590, and this tank is actually also very, very similar to the AMBT, although the gun handling is much worse because it has much more aiming time than the AMBT does. And you can see that this tank has 225 APCR, less normal shell APCR penetration. That is very weak for tier 9. That is so weak, and that you're almost forced to always spam AP, which is not even that good. It is just 268 penetration of AP. That's really not good, and also has terrible velocity of 900. But this APCR is really fast. It's really good for sniping tanks, but you're not going to be switching between those rounds very early. Very much actually, sorry. Because look at those reload speeds. They're kind of interesting actually. The first shot takes 7.46 seconds to load, which enables this tank to have 2.6k DPM if you load all. But honestly, 7.64 seconds for 320 alpha, I don't know, guys. That's really lackluster. And after that, if you full clip, you have like what, 960 average damage in the clip, and it takes so long to load that clip again. It takes, look at this, 18 plus 15 plus 8, it's just so long. 23, that's a 40-second reload, guys, for what, 960 damage at tier 9. I mean, the standard B can do better. What is so special about this thing? 2.66 aiming time, fully decked out with every single purple equipment that exists on this planet, guys. Dispersion factors are absolutely horrible. 0.19 while moving, 0.19 during tank traverse, and 0.17 during turret traverse. This is really bad. The 0.33 dispersion that's maxed out as well. That's really bad. The gun handling of this tank is really bad. Is there going to be a field of this tank that is going to be outstanding? 5 degrees of gun depression. Oh god. 52 top speed. Power to weight ratios, meh, it's kind of okay. Let's look at the armor. It is 1800 HP, that's good, but it's a medium tank, and the 5 degrees of gun depression did not convince me. So this tank looks like a kind of T-54 hull with an interesting shaped turret. Look at the armor actually. The armor is fairly okay-ish, in my opinion. Let's look at like a 268 penetration shell, how it's gonna go through this tank. Well, I mean, it's full green against this 268 shell. So as you can see, the side is not gonna bounce much, and also you can't really over angle here because you have a massive weak spot, and the turret is really weak from the sides as well. It would seem like the turret is very weak. It has 2 cupolas which are gigantic. It has 220mm of armor on the cheeks. That's really not gonna cut it in my opinion. And just wow. I'm not sure, guys. This tank really looks abysmal. But there has been a lot of talks about this tank recently, and I think this tank might be in the Christmas boxes, and it might be a good decision for Wargaming to put it in the Christmas boxes, because I think a lot of people will actually buy this tank. They see it's Russian, they see it's a medium tank, they see it's an autoloader. Those are all factors that kind of motivate people to buy more boxes in case this tank was in there. And honestly, it's quite good for the gameplay as well, because this tank is clearly not OP. In fact, I would say it's very weak and it's very abysmal considering what kind of tier 9 and tier 10 tanks are around there. The next tank we're going to be taking a look at is the Lorraine 50T. Now this is a tier 9 French premium heavy tank, which kind of bears a similarity between the AMX 5120 with this kind of front plate, which is very weak actually. It's 90mm and it's very weak, as you can see. And also a mix between the AMX M4 French heavy tanks tier 9 and tier 10. And I actually have also went there and equipped this tank. It has very bad DPM. It has 10 seconds reload time for 400 alpha damage. That's really bad for a tier 9 heavy tank. There are tanks that can do 7 seconds for 400. That's really bad. The penetrations are okay, 264 on the AP and the 308 on the APCR. That's actually very good for a tier 9. One thing that actually is kind of outstanding is the dispersion values are pretty good, 0.28. That's actually very, very good for a heavy tank in my opinion. The dispersion factors are also not that bad. The gun handling of this is going to be okay, but the aiming time is quite long. It's 2.7 even with fully researched and purple equipment. Now you can see that this tank has an insane ammo capacity. It's gonna be good. 120mm of pan. Of caliber. It's also good. 60 top speed, guys. That is so extraordinary in my opinion. If you couple that with 18 power to weight ratio, you're gonna reach that 60 top speed. Of course, the terrain resistances are gonna be quite bad. But actually, let's put the off-road driving on. As you can see, it already improved it a lot. And you can also maybe switch the vents for turbo. But in my opinion, you should not, because you need to probably be focusing on the firepower side of things. And you can see it has 10 degrees of gun depression, 1960 HP actually, which you can also boost up with HP booster. 470 view range is also pretty good. But without further ado, once again, let's look at the armor of this tank, and let's go to hybrid live against normal AP shells. As you can see, the hull is just a massive weak spot, guys. And once again, this tank is interesting enough, and is also another tier 9. Like, I think these tier 9 premium heavy tanks, after the STRVK marathon, can be pretty much introduced into the Christmas boxes. And it's actually a really interesting concept, because I think this Lorraine and the 590 are just not OP at all. They are interesting in their own regard, but they will fit into the gameplay, and I think people are not going to be complaining about them being not that OP. But yeah, the armor model is very bad actually. It's not really a heavy tank. You have to play from a turret, because this armor is going to get penned even by tier 5s, which you will never meet of course, but tier 7s will definitely go through this armor without any kind of effort. And even here there's a weak spot, but the mantlet is actually pretty okay in my opinion. And it doesn't really have any prominent cupolas. The only prominent cupola it has is on the back of the tank. But once you can go hull down with this tank becomes an absolute beast. It kind of feels like it's a T-34 in a way. You know, the T-34 has a very weak hull, but once you go hull down with the T-34, you're kind of really in a good position. And well, I mean, it's going to have the top speed to get into those positions, as you can see, and also has a power to weight ratio. I'm looking forward to this tank too. It's going to be quite a pain in the ass to play, guys, but it's quite interesting in a way that you can go hull down and not really get penned by anything. I mean, of course you have the turret ring here, but yeah, let's take a look at the next. And this tank is just going to be absolutely blowing your mind, guys. The Caliban tier 8 British premium heavy tank, which has an auto-loading clip of 2 shots. But look at this dispersion, 0.58 and 4.5 aiming time, dude. That's just bad. It's just really bad. And I actually put on the vents, first stabs, and IU on this tank with chocolate, or what is this, pudding and tea, and brothers in arms and all that. And even then, even with all this kind of fully decked out equipment, you only have 4.25 aiming time, which is really bad. I honestly cannot even comprehend that much aiming time. It's probably like a T49, like a bad crew T49 kind of aiming time. 0.47 dispersion is also really bad. Let's not even talk about that, man. Dispersion factors are horrible when you're turning a turret. But guys, this tank has an insane HE clip. It has 850 alpha damage on this HE shell, 180mm of penetration. So we could probably call this the FETD of tier 8, and I'm not sure how much I'm looking forward to actually meeting this tank in against me, because if this shell actually penetrates you once and you get outclipped in 4 seconds, by the way, I mean, these reload time is just really bad. You're gonna take 34 seconds rolling that shot if you actually shoot both, and that's really long in my opinion. But it has to be balanced somehow, or like they have to make it look balanced somehow at tier 8, of course. And you can see that the top speed is 33, but it has a really good power to weight ratio, once again 18. So might even wanna swap this IAU for some extra turbo or whatever, get some really good top speeds, because that's probably going to allow you to get into good positions early on, or better positions early on, and do damage. It also has an AP shell, which is actually interesting, because this AP shell Also, I didn't tell you guys about the velocity of this HE, man. You are not going to be sniping with this. This is a face-to-face tank, guys. It has 354 meter per second velocity, man. You guys know how slow that is? That is like 1/5 of what the Leopard 1 can do at tier 10. 1/5 of the speed, that's really, really bad. But it also has an AP shell of 600 damage and 292 pen, guys. Now, this shell is just absolutely crazy at tier 8 at close range. I mean, once you fire these two shells, you're just going to be completely undefended, of course. But imagine, you fire 1200 damage at point blank range at an enemy tank. And that is just insane, because you're going to be also penetrating him because you have 292 pen. I mean, the velocity on this is also not that good. Once again, 500 meters per second. This tank is going to be an in-your-face tank. I honestly cannot imagine this tank to work in any other way because of the dispersion and because of the very, very slow velocity this tank has. But enough talk, let's actually look at the armor model. Maybe it does have something to offer, and I'm going to be... well, this is actually kind of hard because I would need like a normal shell against it. Let's go like versus... Let's take a tank like a... What is a good tank with okay penetration? Let's take a T-34 against it, man. T-34 AP, 248 AP, that's fairly okay. You can see this tank cannot side scrape because the side armor gets overmatched by anything above 105 millimeters of caliber, which means that almost every single tier 8 heavy is going to be overmatching your side. You do have some kind of a GSOR looking turret, and also kind of an interesting shaped upper hull, which can bounce some shots, of course, when you hit it at these funky angles. But it's very, very weak, and you're not really going to be bouncing many shots with this kind of armor profile. Actually, let's go to visual and just show you guys how this tank looks like. So it looks like a very, very fat, but also it doesn't really look that big, honestly. So is this going to be the FETD of tier 8? I mean, this is just ridiculous, man. Like, what can I say? It doesn't really have any armor. I mean, we have these funky angles, but man, this gun is just going to be... And I think, guys, honestly, take my 2 cents. I think this tank is going to be 99% in the Christmas boxes. Why? Because people like playing FETDs, and this tank has a strong resemblance to the FETD with that kind of HE/AP combination. People like auto-loading tanks, and people also like new special and troll kind of stuff. So this tank kind of checks out on all 3 criteria that I have mentioned, and therefore I think there is a huge chance that this is going to be indeed in the Christmas ops, in the Christmas boxes, guys. Probably going to be absolutely mind-breaking once it gets released, because all you're gonna see at tier 8 is just Calibans against Calibans, and it's going to be... I don't even want to know, actually, but I'm not really waiting for this tank to be released on the servers. Of course, you can have fun rounds with this, but this is just so broken in so many ways. Actually, I don't even know. Anyway, let's take a look at our last tank, guys, the Bofors Tornvagn, guys. Sorry, Tornvagn. I'm actually haunted by the Tornvagn nightmare, guys. And you can see that this tank has absolutely zero firepower. 2000 DPM, fully maxed out, 400 alpha, 248 penetration. I mean, the penetration is quite okay on these normal rounds, 248 APCR, but it also has a insanely fast gold shell for almost 300 penetration, which is pretty insane if you ask me. It is 11 seconds of reload, which is really not that good. It kind of reminds me of a T-34 once again. The top speed is 38, but I'd put a turbo on it instead of the vents, because the top speed by default is just 32, which is actually really bad in my opinion, and it also has a really bad power to weight ratio. So this tank is going to be very slow, guys. It also has terrible terrain resistance values as a heavy tank, 10 degrees of gun depression, 0.38 dispersion, which is really bad. Aiming time is okay, dispersion factors are meh, but guys, 1650 HP, and look at this armor model. This is just disgusting. This is just the absolute definition of a disgusting tank. Look at this. What does this remind you, guys? Of course, the Concept 1B. And what if we spiced the Concept 1B up, guys, and we gave this tank no turret weak spots. Oh, that seems like a really good idea, huh? Yeah, so against, well, against gold shells, you have a 60% chance of penetrating the tank here, which is not that great, honestly. It's also kind of small to hit, and there's also a huge chance you're gonna hit the gun, which obviously adds up to the armor values of this tank, even up to like 300 millimeters and at some places 500. But you can see this is an auto bounce angle, and it has no cupola. It doesn't have this funky little weak spot that the concept bomb has here, and this is just ridiculous, honestly. It doesn't really have any kind of hull armor though, as you can see. You can actually side scrape very well against it. Sorry, with this tank, because it has a really steep armor here. But you need to be careful not to over angle it, because once you over angle, it's going to be very weak. As you can see, the whole armor profile of the tank is quite insignificant in terms of armor thickness from the sides and from the back, and you can even penetrate you, I think, from the sides. But this upper plate is actually fairly interesting. It's 270, 290, 300 at some places, which against like normal shells, it's just going to be impenetrable, guys. And meanwhile, the lower plate is kind of weak. If you're facing this tank from a hold down position, where with shooting normal rounds, you just cannot penetrate it, guys. And this, we have come to the Chrysler back in the day, guys. You guys know when the Chrysler K got released onto the server, it didn't really have any weak spots. I'm having the same feeling about this thing, guys. It has no weak spots on the turret against non-premium shells. And this is just absolutely ridiculous, man. You can just peek a ridge line. I'm gonna learn this. I promise you guys, I'm gonna learn this little thing here. But you can just peek like no, why it doesn't. Okay, like this. Just peek like a ridge line like this, and voila, you cannot penetrate this tank. It is physically impossible to penetrate this tank with normal ammunition. Gold shells are gonna go through here, of course, but anything else is just going to be bounced, man. And this is absolutely disgusting of an armor model, in my opinion, guys. Yeah, honestly, it doesn't really have any view range. Also, 360 is very weak, but hey, you have an impenetrable turret. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. If you liked it, please hit the like button and also subscribe, because at 5,000 subscribers we are going to be doing an STB AP only special on my twitch.tv/kajzoo livestream. And guys, once again, thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you soon.